I would do a thing. Oh, sorry. See, that's how I do that. Richard Gunther is here with us, everybody. Richard Gunther. I don't think I left enough time though, so let me just circle back. And now I'll say Richard Gunther is here with us from 3 shows currently in production. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct. Okay.
That would be the Smart Home Show,
Yes.
Home On,
Yes.
and Entertainment 2.0.
Now, we talked about the Smart Home Show and Entertainment 2.0 the first 2 days of the week. Do you want to go ahead and talk about the third?
Yeah, absolutely. So Home On is really my labor of love, and that's the show that I've been dedicating an enormous amount of time to over the last few years. I had been writing at the Digital Media Zone for a couple of years and podcasting as co-host of Entertainment 2.0 when I decided, you know what, we should be talking about home automation stuff because this is kind of getting big. And there aren't many podcasts out there about home automation stuff. So I thought, okay, I know about this stuff. I can talk about this stuff. I'll get this going. And I started a format where I talked about news and then different topics with different guests. Every episode has a guest of some sort. And we usually will discuss either what their company makes or what's going on in the industry at the time. And we've been going for over 7 years now.
Let me ask a question really quickly. Do you also cover security in home automation? And I don't mean like a security thing, like, Simply Safe or something like that, who sponsored me about 1.5 years ago on macosken. I'm not talking about them for that. My point is, I'm not talking about security systems. Do you talk about things like when Apple started doing their home automation stuff, they were, chip authenticated, now they've gone software authenticated, and like the security differences between those two versus just walking into Home Depot and buying whatever you find? Do you talk about the security side as well?
Yeah, we do when it's relevant to a product. I would say that most of the discussion on the show is about product news because we focus on DIY stuff. Mm-hmm. So if something is more secure or less secure, that is something that we talk about. But we also end up kind of talking about some security issues with some discount. And the examples that I might provide there are when you have news hitting that products have been proven that they're insecure because if you happen to be on property at the moment that the person is provisioning the device for the first time and you happen to have the ability to get onto their Wi-Fi when they're doing that, then you'd be able to, well, come on. I mean, the likelihood of all of that happening for most citizens in this country is absurdly low. So we try to take a pragmatic approach to it. Now, that said, at some point in time, and I should talk to you guys, I want to do a show focused on security. Like if you're trying to create the most secure network of your smart home devices, mm-hmm. What's a good way to do that? And we've had some listeners ask for something like that.
Okay. Yeah, well, I might be able to hook you up with some people. I don't know. But anyway,
I've heard that.
Well, I mean, and this was not this was not to shame you. This was not to try to get anybody else on your show as well. It's just the kind of thing I'm curious about. Because the thing that I always worry about, and this is not home automation stuff, but there are those $30 Android tablets that it turns out come just loaded with all kinds of, if not outright malware, certainly some security issues.
Right.
Or the picture frame that you can buy at CVS for $10 and just plug it into your computer, and who knows, right?
Sure, no problem.
There's so much excitement, I think, around a lot of home automation stuff or around a whole bunch of Internet of Things stuff that people aren't stopping to think, okay, well, this is a teeny tiny computer that I'm plugging into a much more important computer, all of which is now going to have access to my network. And it's not the kind of thing that I automatically know what the dangers are, but I was just wondering if you were covering the dangers or just setting people loose willy-nilly with, passwords like 1234 or password.
Hopefully not.
I hope not too.
To the extent necessary, hopefully people understand that, and we try to cover it when we can.
Very cool. Very cool. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So there was an interesting thing that happened earlier this week. I was really excited about it from the radio. Sorry, last week now as people hear this. I was excited about it from the radio side, but it brought up another question that I was kind of curious about too. Beats won Apple's radio station since 2015 when it launched Apple Music, when it launched Apple Music, when it rebranded Beats Music as Apple Music, but for some reason created a brand new radio station and called that Beats One. 5 years later, they've gotten rid of the Beats branding for Beats One Radio. It is now Apple Music One, I believe. And then they also have Apple Music Country and Apple Music Hits. First of all, I'm curious if you have listened to any of those radio stations and if you have any initial thoughts.
So I have rarely listened to the Beats stations.
Mm-hmm.
Beats One, I will occasionally check into and reconfirm that, yep, this music is way too trendy and or edgy for me. So
okay.
I honestly forgot that they had a country station.
They didn't have a country station. It launched this week. That's what I'm saying, or last week. There's only been...
That makes more sense then.
Yeah, the whole time that they've had the Beats radio station, they had Beats 1, and so I kept thinking, cool, because that means eventually there will be a Beats 2 and a Beats 3, and I wonder what those will be. And instead now they just have Apple Music 1, and then they have Apple Music Country and Apple Music Hits, which is weird because Apple Music Hits is it's the 80s, 90s, and today. Basically, it's that, except not quite as Coast 107. You know, not quite as light rock, less talk kind of thing. Because they're certainly still bringing personality. And as I mentioned on macosken last week, when I turned it on, they went from Pixies to Ministry on a show that was co-hosted by a guy from Soul Coughing. So it's not.
Wow.
It's not. You're right. It's not light rock, less talk, light rock 100. It's. I don't know exactly what it is yet, but I haven't had a huge chance to listen to a lot of it. So bottom line, you really haven't listened to much as far as the radio shows or radio stations are concerned.
I haven't.
Okay.
I haven't. I will generally just let it come up with whatever music it pulls together by asking for like an artist or asking it to play a certain genre of music and just let it do its thing.
Okay. See, I'm into the whole radio thing because I'm into the whole radio thing. The problem that I have is I'm also picky. Like I am turned on by the idea of the Beats thing. Not Beats, I'm sorry, by the Hits station. I'm not as turned on by the country station because I think people know this. I grew up in Nashville, Tennessee. And when you turn on a radio station in Nashville, Tennessee, you don't hear somebody with a Southern twang. You hear a professional broadcaster. I'm not saying that you can't have a Southern twang and be a professional broadcaster, but Nashville was this place where Pat Sajak came out of Nashville. Oprah Winfrey came out of Nashville. Dan Miller came out of Nashville. He went back to Nashville fairly quickly. Jerry House came out of Nashville. They're dyed-in-the-wool broadcasters. And when I turned on the country station, there was a guy with a twang so deep it sounded affected. And I felt like it was less about, the kind of thing that you might actually hear in a country market and more like a caricature. Now, that said, that was on there for maybe 2 minutes, maybe 3, before I switched over to something else, because the other thing is I'm writing all the time and I can't listen to people talking while I'm writing.
I totally understand that.
So really the question, though, around all of this was, I guess it was back in April of this year, John Prosser said that he thought that Apple was going to do away with the Beats branding for the headphones. They were going to switch that to Apple. And then this past week, when they got rid of the Beats branding for the radio station, which I personally never understood anyway, if they weren't going to keep the Beats branding for the streaming service, when they got rid of the Beats branding, now that talk is coming up again that they're going to get rid of the Beats branding for the headphones. And then when I went to the store the other day, I saw at least 2 pair of Beats headphones on the street. Somebody wrote to me and they said the NBA playoffs, or the NBA whatever that they're watching right now, half the people on the side of the court were wearing Beats branding, Beats headphones, and there was Beats branding on the court. I don't see them getting rid of the Beats branding because the Beats branding is its own thing. I can see getting rid of it for the streaming service because who cares? We're listening to Apple Music at that point. Why wouldn't we listen to an Apple radio station?
Right.
It's hard for me to see turning under the Beats brand where that Beats brand is synonymous with so many celebrities and individuals out there.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that seems foolhardy to just discount that and subsume that under the Apple branding. I thought the Beats acquisition at the time was quite surprising, maybe even a little bit of an odd fit. And they, I believe, did a fairly good job of making it their own bringing it in-house, continuing to be a good shepherd of that brand, if you will, and for them to just abandon that now, I don't see that.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I just don't see it happening.
It's weird because, I mean, I'm always confused by people who think it should happen or will happen, because I believe to a number of people the Beats branding is as cool as the Apple branding. It's not like if you're buying, well, I don't want to out any bad brand names because I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I don't think the Beats line benefits any more from having the Apple brand on it than it does having the Beats brand, because like I remember when Apple bought Beats, most of my friends who were audiophiles said that they were, muddy, awful sounding headphones, but people absolutely loved them. I've also had a lot of people tell me that they've improved since Apple has bought them, but the one thing they never lost in any of that time was their cool factor. I mean, Beats has been as cool as Beats was since well before Apple bought it, and changing it, doing away with it seems kind of crazy.
Even expanding into other form factors as well, like the in-ear and stuff like that. So I just like abandoning that now. I think the brands benefit from each other. I think that Apple benefits from Beats being Beats, and I think Beats benefits from the audience that Apple brings to that brand.
So if they eventually come out with a car, do you call it Apple Car or do you call it Beats Car?
You know my thoughts on this. There's not going to be a car.